Hey guys, welcome to today's video. So I can finally spill all the tea on my last Hagwon, and one of the biggest, kind of the turning point of why I left. I think I need to give you guys some background, and this video is kind of long just because there's a lot of nuances and things you have to understand about my personal background and also the kind of working culture of a Hagwon. So a Hagwon is a privately owned teaching institution, so it's essentially extra school on top of a student's regular actual like mandatory school. So it's just getting supplementary classes, also usually more advanced level lessons, and a lot of people come to Korea to teach English at these academies. I was teaching in Korea for 5 years. I taught 2 years at a public school, which is run by the government, and then 3 years at Hagwons. Prior to teaching in Korea, I actually worked a couple years in corporate America. So I was working at multi-billion-dollar corporations in the media marketing department. So I've had real corporate America experience before working in Korea. And one of the reasons I actually moved to Korea, or wanted to move to Korea, and I talk about this in previous videos, is just that I was so burnt out from my job working corporate. I was working crazy hours and I was making really good money, but at the same time I was not really happy and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So it's kind of one of the reasons I came to Korea, and I thought I would come here and teach 2 years and it would just feel like kind of a break, and then after the 2 years I would move back and then go back into doing something else more corporate wise, but I never did, and I'm still here. So that's the quick background on my work history. When it comes to putting in the work and doing the work, I know all about it. But I want to say when it comes to teaching, particularly at Hagwons in Korea, because they are essentially companies, you're an employee at this company and we all sign a contract, we do our job. The really big difference though is that for most people, when you come to Korea and you're teaching English, you're tied to your visa, which is an E2 teaching visa, and it's essentially you're tied to your employer. You can't switch jobs. You basically can't quit and find another job unless your current employer wants to give you a letter to release you from your current contract. It's a bit intense in that way, and that's how it works in many other countries as well when your company sponsors your visa. This was my second Hagwon and I had re-signed my contract with them, so this was my 2nd year. And when I first started at this Hagwon, to give you a little background, they are smaller Hagwon and there was only about 3 to 4 English teachers at a given time. So this was really different because before I worked at a bigger Hagwon, that Hagwon was definitely run more like a corporation. Like everything was really set. It was like tak, 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 and everyone followed the same schedule and there was like a rhythm. This particular Hagwon was a little bit different in that because it was smaller, it wasn't as well organized, I would say, compared to where I've previously worked. And also a really big caveat, I cannot tell you the name of where I worked because I still live in Korea and defamation laws are very real. I will say on the pro side of it all, they paid on time. I was put up in a pretty nice apartment, as you guys have seen in my apartment tour. Outside of kind of bigger major Hagwon issues, there wasn't really any. So I wouldn't necessarily blacklist my last Hagwon. For the most part, like I never really had any problem. Also, a little background on this place. So when I first started, they, I guess, had a string of maybe not super great teachers. They kind of had this string of not doing so well. And I guess by the time I got in there, they had lost a ton of kids. And when I first went to interview, they had told me, you're gonna work from these hours and you're gonna have X amount of free periods, and those are sometimes interchangeable because our schedules are always changing. So with my schedule, it was never like, it's never permanent, because what happens is you get your class schedule, but then maybe some classes will merge, some classes don't have enough kids, so they put them into another class. Sometimes you get private lessons, and those don't always last forever, but it's kind of like an unknown time. But a lot of those private lessons, maybe they're preparing for an interview or they're preparing for a competition, and those are kind of just separate classes. Sometimes kids, we have makeup classes, so if a kid misses a class, we make it up to them, and those can cut into your free periods. Other times they just add new classes because a bunch of new kids suddenly join at once. That's kind of like how this school worked in a way, and again, every Hagwon is totally different. I've worked in 3 separate places in Korea and they've all been drastically different. So I won't say that my experience is going to be the same as yours, but I will say that this situation I felt was important to share because it is kind of a classic case of how a workplace goes out of its way to take advantage of you as an English teacher, because they kind of own you. It's definitely workplace harassment, what I went through, and it was totally inappropriate. You need that background to understand the context of the story. When I first started, because there weren't as many students, I had a ton of break times. During the break times, usually I would prepare for a class or prepare for certain lessons I needed to prepare, or I could get ahead on making review tests and report cards. And we do review tests and report cards every quarter. They take a long time, almost 100 kids, and each class needs a separate review test because they're mostly on different books, and even if they're sharing the same book, there are different sections of the book. And you can't really repeat review tests, like I can't reuse them because it's based on the specific sections that that have been covered in that specific time, and because the school doesn't follow like a standard calendar, it's just all over the place. You know, whenever I had free period, I would try to get ahead on the report cards. I would try to get ahead on making these tests because I knew they were coming out. After I started my first year, we got some new teachers, and you know, I would say like the mix of the teachers, like our rapport, there was 3 teachers and all 3 of us had experience working with kids and teaching kids, and so we started getting really good feedback from the parents, and suddenly there's just like a ton of kids joining our academy. It's like a bum rush all year, and it just never stops. It got to the point where I eventually had no free periods. So I had no extra time to make anything. I would do it pretty much in the 5-minute breaks in between my classes. So instead of going to the bathroom, I would literally just be like working to like finish a quiz I need to make like really quickly, or checking someone's homework, or like preparing for something for the next class. It was always just kind of like a go, go, go situation. Never really a problem until we got to the quarter when review tests and report cards needed to be made. I had notified my director and also our middle management that, you know, I didn't have any free periods. You know, when would I be able to make the tests and the report cards? And at this particular time, I was actually the only teacher without any free periods. And like the other teachers had 1 free period, so it wasn't like everyone had a lot of free periods to share. It was literally like, just like coincidentally they had 1 and I had 0. It is one of those situations where it just felt like you're being punished for being good at your job, and that's not, I'm not trying to like flex like I was this really great teacher, but I did my job. I can actively say I wasn't bad at it because every place I've ever worked at, they've all asked me to resign. Even this place I had this fight and they asked me to resign again. I'm always doing my due diligence and I'm always taking responsibility, and you know, I care about the kids and I want them to do well. You know, I informed everyone of this like 2 months in advance, and then cuts to 1 month in advance, I've not heard anything, so I reach out again. I'm like, hey, so what am I supposed to do about these tests? And then cut to like closer and closer to the test, suddenly they're like, oh, are you working on your tests? And I was like, no, I told you I don't have any time to work on these tests. They're like, oh, that's a problem. And I was like, yeah, I know, I understand that that's a problem, that's why I mentioned it multiple times. Can you just come early and do them? And I was like, no, I'm not contracted to come in early to do it. Are you compensating me for coming in early to do it? I don't really want to do overtime, period. I could easily go without, but if I'm going to have to do it, would you pay me extra? Oh, no, you should just come in and do it. You should just basically do free labor. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I just did it. And I just went to work like normal. I taught my classes, blah, blah, blah. Cut to a week before the test. These tests don't even matter because especially in Hagwons, especially where we were, the tests are completely inflated. And at the end of the day, their report card will not say anything lower than 75, because even if the kid has never done their homework, has never turned in an assignment, has never done well on exams, that's like the bare minimum school will go, because they want to retain the kids, because that's, if they lose a kid, that's lost income. So keep in mind, this school is not about the children. If anything, the teachers are about the children, and this school just kind of sees the kids as dollar signs. Don't at me and saying like, this is for the kids, for the benefit of the kids. It's not, because I feel like there's someone out there who would comment that, and I just want to make that clear. Cut to the week before, I'm teaching my second to last class. It's Friday. The kids are coming in, and then one of the front desk managers comes into my room. And keep in mind, she's not my boss. She just mans like the front desk. There's 3 front desk ladies, and this one in particular I was not close to at all. She comes in, she's like, hey teacher, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah, sure, come in. What's up? And she goes, I don't think you know your job. Excuse me? You've been causing some big problems. Okay, please elaborate. I also want to keep in mind, this past week was like terrible. I'd been super busy. I'd been super overwhelmed with personal things, and also work had just been a little crazy, obviously, because I didn't have any break, and I was on my period, and just all these things were kind of like compiling on top of each other. I was in no emotional state to be having a fight with anybody. Keep in mind, this is the 5 minutes I have in between my classes. My kids are already starting to come in though and sit down, and I was getting really emotional, and I started kind of like tearing up because I'm just upset that this is even happening. This whole thing is ridiculous. So I take it into the hallway because I don't want my kids to see, because it's just completely inappropriate, unprofessional. I'm supposed to be their teacher, and here I am getting yelled at, and I'm getting like visibly upset. She was like, you need to do your job. You need to make these tests. It is your job. She just kept saying that over and over, and I was like, oh my god, like, am I in the twilight zone? I was trying to stay really professional, even though I was about to pop off. I understand what you're saying. And meanwhile, I'm like kind of crying, so I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but I have already said this. Like, if I'm given time, I can make the test, but I have not had any time. All these little breaks, I'm working on stuff for the other classes. There's some things I need to prepare. I was like, okay, I cannot have this conversation right now. I'm really sorry, but I'm clearly like very upset right now, so I'd rather not have this conversation at this moment. I was like, I need to go teach my class. So I leave her in the hallway, and I just go into my classroom, and I like wipe away everything, and I'm like, oh, okay, get it together. So I teach the class, and then she comes in again in the next 5-minute break. We're gonna call her Karen. Karen had asked me to come in an hour earlier than my scheduled contracted hours, and that's ridiculous. It's not in my contract to come in that early. I'm not staying late to do these things. Like, I need to be given time to make all these tests and assessments. Karen, teacher, can you please not have this conversation? I'd rather not have this conversation right now. I was like, it's late. Like, I will talk to the director on Monday about this, because clearly this is not going to get resolved like this. And she wouldn't leave. In my head, I was like, why won't she leave? And then she starts telling me all this stuff. And at this point, I press record on my phone. And this is the key point here. This is how I kind of made sure that it doesn't become a he said, she said moment, because we do have CCTVs in the classroom, but they don't pick up sound. So I recorded everything on my phone as soon as I realized she was not leaving my classroom. I recorded this whole conversation where she's yelling at me, and she's basically saying, you need to give me an answer. And I was like, I told you the answer. This is just not the answer you want. And she's, no, you need to tell me the right answer as a teacher, or else I'm not leaving. The kids are waiting outside because they're supposed to come into class, and I was like, I can't. I'm not letting them in, obviously. She's like, are you lying to me about the work you have to do? And she was saying really all these negative things, and so I recorded all of it, and I'm really upset. I was about to quit my job. I called my friends. I was like, I need to quit my job. I'm so upset. She was really like vindictive, and really the way she was belittling me during that whole time, this whole conversation, and the things she said to me. She said, like, how can you show me your tears? And after I told her I really do not want to have this conversation right now, I need to teach a class, she started laughing at me. She asked me, like, what do you even do? What do you even have to prepare? And I was like, I have to prepare all of this stuff, or like X, Y, Z. She's like, oh really? Does that take a long time? What are you on? So what I did was, after I got home, obviously I cried to my friends. I was really upset. I was about to quit my job, but they were like, okay, maybe you want to think rationally. You've been at the school almost 2 years. Your contract's gonna be up in a few months. Like, you have a nice severance waiting for you, so maybe you don't want to quit, but like, this should be resolved. I took the recording and I cut it into all the bits where I felt like I had been kind of verbally assaulted and where I had been harassed at my own workplace. Put them all together. Next, I wrote down everything from the audio recording, and I typed it up, and I put it in quotes. It kind of looks like this, where I put everything in quotes that she said, and then why it was completely unprofessional, why it was workplace harassment, why I felt really like attacked and threatened, and why I felt my job was being threatened. And I put in like where she said it in the audio clipping, XYZ. I've never been spoken to like that, not just at work, but anywhere in my entire life. I mean, I don't really cause problems. I'm kind of just like here, and I'm like, hey, what's up? I messaged my boss on Saturday, and I was like, I really need to talk to you on Monday. And she goes, yeah, I heard from Karen teacher about what happened. She's like, I think there's been some sort of misunderstanding. Karen teacher felt like you were fighting her. Obviously, Karen teacher told her this whole side of the story that was completely siding for her and made me look like I was aggressive and I was like fighting her. So on Monday, I go into the director's office and I sit down and I hand her the piece of paper. And she goes, really, a paper? And I was like, yeah. And I hand her the paper, and then I sat down and I just pressed play on the audio. And she listened to the whole thing, puts down the paper, and I can tell she's already like worrying that I'm gonna sue them because of everything that was said, because I was like, I could easily sue you guys at this point. And she goes, I'm so sorry. That was really not okay what she did. I feel really bad about what happened. And she starts apologizing to me. I literally asked her, I was like, do you think I'm not a good teacher? And she was like, no, you're such a good teacher. All the kids love you. Like, all, you know, we want you to stay. And I was like, okay, that's nice to hear. You know, this can never happen again. I will not allow this ever. And she's like, okay. She's like, what can we do? At this point, I was just like, you know what? As long as Karen never talks to me ever again, we're not gonna have any issues. So basically, this all went down. I didn't really want to sue anyone because I just felt like that's a deep battle that I'm not into, and I just don't need that drama in my life. But I was also, you know, adamant about putting my foot down and making sure that I was going to be respected in my workplace and that I wasn't going to be taken advantage of or bullied into making something easier for you at my expense. At that point, I had thought, you know, why am I even like dealing with this BS? And that was kind of a turning point for me where I realized, okay, I need to not do this anymore. Because it's so easy to re-sign contracts because it's kind of like a little bit mindless at times. You just kind of show up for work, do it, and then leave. But I wasn't happy doing it, and after this was kind of like the final straw for me. That was like a wake-up call. I was like, okay, I really need to get out. After that, it was kind of resolved in the sense that like I didn't have to deal with her anymore. She was not allowed to talk to me because they were like, you cannot, like, don't even make eye contact. If I had left, they would literally have nothing. No report cards, no review tests, no teacher. So it's kind of one of those things where I knew that I had the upper hand and I made sure to take advantage of it. So there are times you have to pick and choose your battles. You're not gonna win every time. There's gonna be things they're gonna ask you to do that you don't want to do, you think are stupid, but you're gonna have to do it, of course. I've done it. But there are certain things that I cannot accept. And of course, it is my job to make tests and report cards. That wasn't my argument ever. I wasn't like, I'm not making them, period. It was that I am happy to make them because it is part of my job, and I understand that. But it's also part of your job as my boss to make sure that I am being treated well and that I'm given time to do my job. Does that make sense to you guys? Because that made sense to me, and for some reason that didn't make sense to them initially when I brought all this up. I mean, this is obviously a little bit more, there was a lot more that happened, and this is kind of my shortened version of it, even though it's not very short. But I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I felt like this was super important to talk about because so many people come to Korea, they work in these Hagwons, and they're treated so disrespectfully. They're really taken advantage of. You shouldn't allow someone to belittle you or to bully you or to threaten you at your workplace or any place, anywhere. And that's kind of where I draw the line. As soon as I feel like you're attacking me in a very unprofessional and completely disrespectful manner, I kind of just lose it a little bit. I am too experienced and too done with that bullshit to ever deal with that. And the thing is, like, this is, you know, we get a salary here, but it's not that much. Like, I was making double this. I was making double that when I was an assistant. So, you know, for me, like, teaching in Korea, it's not about necessarily like money. Money is important. I need to pay my bills, but it was kind of about like being able to live in Korea and being able to build my life here. If anyone ever needs a wake-up call, there you go. There was one. That was the one for me. I didn't share that with you guys because, again, I needed to wait till a suitable amount of time had passed. And now I can kind of look back on it and laugh a little bit, even though it was actually very intense for me, that experience. I I don't know. I hope this is helpful to someone who needs it. Let me know if you guys have any questions about all this kind of stuff. I know it's very confusing. Ideally, you guys don't want to go through the same situation, and I'm sure many of you guys have had the same situation, probably even worse than me. I want to make this space in this channel kind of a safe space for everyone to be able to talk about what they need to talk about and to share advice or to get advice and, you know, all of that. So, you know, feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below. Feel free to, you know, share your experience. I think that's also really important. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!